Welcome to The Corner, La Source's digital show dedicated to the sport and entertainment industry. Every 2 weeks, we invite a professional to share their experience, background, and challenges. The sport industry moves fast, and having their insights is the best way to keep up to speed. Welcome to The Corner.
We're trying to help sports organizations, or we're trying to help also brands to leverage new activations. And this is something also sometimes, in full transparency and honesty, it's you feel like there is two worlds, or they are not speaking the same languages, or they are not living within the same reality. So I was just curious to hear from you in terms of, okay, how do you manage, because you are in between those two, actually. You are representing, and you are trying to make it a win-win, as you were saying, but sometimes, it's not the same language, not the same skills, not the same expectations. So how do you bridge the gap?
I guess the biggest difference is always certainly around digital and data. I think is the biggest difference, because if you look at the way brands invest their marketing these days, it is clearly driven by that, predominantly driven by digital, let's say. And generally, sports sponsorship offerings don't match up. If you look at the percentage of a brand, what they spend on digital versus what the percentage of the digital offering is in a sponsorship package, they won't match necessarily. So I think that's always the thing that you're trying to bridge. And there's not a one size fits all. I don't think it's just trying to accelerate the change. I think COVID, as I mentioned earlier, has probably helped to some degree, because sports have had to act quicker and develop things faster. But
what would be, I don't know the recipe, but what would be, if you have one or two tips in terms of, imagine I'm a federation or I'm a club like Reading, or obviously it depends on the resources you have internally, the objectives you have, and the brand you have and the competitions you are in. But imagine, I don't know if you are the FA, not necessarily a big one like the IOC or UEFA, but what would be the first 1-2 tips in terms of, okay, how can we make sure we bridge that gap, or we make ourselves relevant to the new demands of the sponsors, of the brands?
I guess even the way you talk about yourself is like talking the way a brand talks, and just pitching in their language a little bit. And also customizing what you offer to brands as well. But that sounds stupid, but we see so many proposals that just, not even proposals, but decks that might be 20 pages about the sport and about their history and heritage, and which is interesting and okay, but it doesn't answer the question, how does that help? How does it help the brand? You need to get the brand's attention of, this is why you should sponsor us. It can help you sell X, Y, Z, or raise your brand, or just
I am picturing you as you're talking in front of a deck, like you've just received, like, cool, that's cool for the historic classes or whatever, but I don't really care about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you find that as well? Do you see? I don't know. Have you?
Yeah, it's a bit like too much maybe on the history or the traditions, but on our side, it's more the, how do you activate, or how do you try to actually help sports organizations to leverage new technologies, or what you were saying in terms of data or the digital space, in terms of making sure you drive ROI for these partners, or for what you're trying to achieve. But at least you try to know exactly, and to have some kind of a proof. But the thing is, usually people don't necessarily understand it. Or I would not be... Maybe with COVID, like you were saying, there has been clearly a change, and because people have had to activate with fans at home and all this kind of stuff, so they had to move to digital because they had to actually activate the partnership and to make sure that there is a win as well for the brands. But it's more, I think, it might go back to what you were saying in terms of culture as well. So I was thinking about it from you, because you've been within sports organizations and different ones in different sports, and now you're on the other side of the table. So I was just like curious to see, like, what's your take on, how do you find it different, like being within a right owner or within a sports organization, and on the other side of the table, being like representative of a brand or in a consultancy?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess the frustration is that you can't impact change if you're talking to a rights owner. You can clearly advise and suggest things, but you can't necessarily impact change, which can be the frustration.
But are you free to say whatever you want?
Yeah, within reason, as long as, I'm English and I'm diplomatic, so that's fine.
As always.
But yeah, you can, and I guess that's the benefit, that you can advise people and say what you think. But I think it also, culture is a good point, and it goes back to having support within the organisation and someone at quite a senior level that might support and champion it, because people have a probably misconception about how complicated it is, and it's probably just a question of speaking to a few people, or even not necessarily agencies, but people you might know that can explain it and just explain what a simple strategy in sort of data and CRM strategy could help you do, and what you need to do, and try and break it down and make it a bit more digestible as well, rather than getting probably, scared off by it, but by it being too big almost.
Yeah, I see. I fully agree, and it's also funny I'm just at the start of my journey, being on the other side of the table, but I would tend to agree with what you've said. If I'm pushing a bit and doing a bit of, not like crystal ball question, but Kel, I wanted to ask you a bit more for our listeners and even for myself, because I'm quite interested. It's like, how do you see the future for brands and sports organizations? I mean, you've talked a lot around data and the digital space and how COVID-19 has impacted it and accelerated things. But over the next months and years, what do you see, the relationship or like the partnerships be morphing into between those two entities?
I mean, generally, I see it as positive and healthy. And I think, again, not dominating everything with COVID, but COVID has shown how much people need sport and want sport. And that's only a positive thing for brands as well, because it helps them create an emotional connection with an audience. And that sport is one of the few things that can do that, and do it at scale as well. So I think generally it's kind of healthy, and you just feel people desperate to get back to sport, with Euros coming soon, and then clearly Rugby League World Cup following soon after. But so I think generally healthy and desperate for sport to continue. In terms of how that looks between brands and rights owners, I think it just will continue to evolve as rights owners get smarter and have more advanced data, and how data and AI tools sort of go across all areas of the business. So I only see sort of positive things, but it's going to be sort of playing catch up a little bit. I still think the sort of rights owners playing catch up a bit.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoy it as much as we love creating them. If you like the episode, feel free to comment, rate, and share with people around you. You can visit our website, www.lastsource.io, to learn more about our activities. You will discover a wide range of articles and can subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest tech and sports news in your mailbox every month. Stay tuned for new episodes.
Le corner.